You deserve more than you've been doing for yourself. Starting without sustaining is almost pointless. That's how you find your expertise or your genius. People say winners quit last. I'd argue winners quit first when they need to. Plant 1 million seeds, and if none of them grow, plant 1 million more.
Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's cool. Look, you got a new book. We're going to be talking about a book, but for any of you out there that don't know who Chris Ruden is, you can actually go back into our Making Things Happen podcasts, search that name. We had him on before when he wrote his book, The Upper Hand. I think that was your first book, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. So, been very successful, hence why there's a second. So you can go back and find out a little bit more about him, about his background. But if you're too dull to do that and you want to get in with the podcast, and understand this guy is a record-holding powerlifter, motivational speaker. You may have actually seen him on the rock show Titan Games. He's an all-round powerhouse that, quite simply, you've got things that you could easily use as excuses, but you've actually decided to use them as superpowers. Tell us a little bit about you, and then we're going to go straight into the book. So why is it that I've just said that you could have excuses, and what would those excuses be?
Of course. So, I was born with physical disability. I got a super cool prosthetic arm now, but my entire life, for almost 20 years, I hid my disability from the world, from myself. I shoved it in a pocket, in a glove, and I did everything I could to hide the fact that I felt like a monster. I felt broken. And because of my disability, I told myself this story of, I could never be more than the way I was born or what I don't have. And for a while, don't get me wrong, I did pity party myself into this passive aggressive lifestyle of be as competitive as you can, but never actually appreciate who you are, because you'll always be less than, But
why is it we are like that? Because, you quite rightly said it, you've got prosthetics there. You try to hide behind it. Now, you've got something very visual that when you speak, you actually wave it in the air.
Yeah.
You've got a prosthetic there that go, hey, I'm not like everybody. There's a lot of people, though, that have those missing parts psychologically. And in today's world, especially with social profiles, we try hiding who we actually are until we realize it's our superpower. Why is it mentally like that?
Man, I think we all have this idea of how life should go, and we set these expectations or these shoulds of life. Life shouldn't be this way, or life should be this way. And when we set those expectations for ourselves or even for other people, you're setting yourself up to fail, because you have this expectation that's against reality. Instead of wanting to be somewhere else other than where you are, what happens if we just appreciated or accepted where we were so we could build from where we are? You can't build from where you don't exist. And that's the problem, is we create this conditional philosophy of, if only I had X, if only I got on Stevedsims' show, if only I was speaking on bigger stages, if only. And it's always this place of more. I want more. We're constantly moving the goalpost. You can't get to where it doesn't exist. So if you can't find pleasure or at least contentment in where you are right now, and honesty in where you are right now, you'll never get somewhere else that, quite frankly, doesn't exist.
I love the should-haves. Now, we've got the should-haves. Our lives should be like this, and we look on Instagram and everyone else's car's cleaner and grass is greener. So we get these misconceptions and these horrible levels that we go, oh, when I achieve that, I'll be happy. And we all try to fit in with what that perfect world looks like, only to realize that the fantastic, successful people out there never focused on fitting in, actually focused on standing out. Now, you took your I don't know what I want to call it, your position in life, your physique, and decided that's not going to stop me being a world record power lifter. You actually decided to take what you had been dealt with and to use it as a superpower. When that adjustment happened in your life, how did it happen and how did you go forward with it?
So I talk about this a lot. There was a moment in my life where I stopped being as certain about how life could be and started being more curious. I stopped being so certain that everything sucks. I stopped being certain that it could never happen to me. I stopped being so certain that success is possible, just not for people like me. I stopped with the certainty statements and started with the curiosity statements, where it was more so like, how could I make this happen? Like, yeah, I can't lift the bar like a normal person, but hey, disability is normal. 1 in 4 people have a disability at some point in their life or in the world. So instead of saying I can't do this, I was like, how could I do it? If I were to do it, what would it look like? By being more curious instead of certain, it opened me up for possibilities and adaptation. And I found a way to attach something to the bar to lift weights and to go from 135 pounds, which is incredible for a person with one hand, all the way up to 675 pounds. That was great to break the world record. Don't get me wrong. But what it really showed me was if I can do that with pounds or weight, I can do that with anything conceptually. And maybe I can also teach that. Maybe I can teach people to go from nothing to something and from something to something great. And maybe there's a process there.
Oh, that's beautiful. And a very, very humble brag for being a world record holder. So congratulations.
I can't convert to kilos for my friends across the pond, but it's somewhere up there. But it was a great moment. Don't get me wrong. But like, man, I'll never forget like lifting the weight in front of like 20,000 people. It was incredible. But all I could think about was literally everyone who told me it's impossible, it's impossible, it's impossible. I'm like, man, if I would have listened to any of them, if I would have listened to one of them who said it's not possible, if I would have listened to myself when I was at my most negative, like there's no way, all of those voices were wrong. And of course, hindsight is 2020, but damn, I'm so damn glad that I just gave it a chance, gave myself a chance, you know?
I remember one of the greatest lines that I've ever got for motivation, and it wasn't from Tony Robbins or Buddha or anyone else. It was from Harlequin in one of the Marvel movies, and she turned around and she said, normal is a setting on a washing machine. And we're so trying to become normal until we realize that we're supposed to be abnormal. We're supposed to disrupt. What you just mentioned about winning the record hold there, it wasn't a defining moment. It was a refining moment. In essence,
for sure,
it wasn't the pinnacle. It was the start of your journey. And now you actually speak on stage. I can imagine, and again, I'm being rude here, and I apologize in advance, but to get the point across, I can imagine you grabbing people's attention by walking on there with a prosthetic limb. And straight away, as you've already said, you've thrown your own pity parties. But then there becomes that transformational moment in someone's mind where they realize, hey, he got my attention because of this. But look where he's taken me. Do you like speaking on stage and creating that transformational moment?
I don't like speaking on stages. I live it. I love it. It's what I will do until the day I die. To say I like it would be a disservice to what I feel every time I'm on stage. I'm more of an introvert. But on stage, I feel so comfortable. The idea of being an audience freaks me out more than being on a stage in front of 5,000 people. You know, I feel so confident because imagine trying to give someone $100 bill. You wouldn't feel weird about doing that. That's what I feel like. I'm giving value and I'm giving free value out. So I don't feel bad about giving it. If anything, I'm really excited about it. The big shift in my speaking and speaking business, though, was going from telling my story to your story is not your message. Your story is a vessel for your message. That changed everything because people do love, they see the arm, they see the diabetes, they see all the adversity accolades, you know, or the adversity Olympics. But when they hear the message behind that and they realize everyone fits in my story, you yourself have the exact same story as me. You went through some shit, you got over shit, and more shit's coming. The question is, what are you going to do with that story? Like, how are you going to refine that story, as you said? How are you not going to let those moments define you and instead refine you to get you to the life you kind of want? Or at least a life that doesn't suck.
I'm interrupting this podcast for 35 seconds to give you more value. If you are an ambitious entrepreneur looking for the opportunity in everything you come across, don't just listen to this podcast. Imagine taking part in these conversations every week. Imagine having a new network of creative and disruptive entrepreneurs to support and push you into becoming the person you can be. With this high level and exclusive community, it exists. Head to simsdistillery.com to learn more. Oh, that's good. Yeah, life that doesn't suck. Do you know, it's funny? A good friend of mine, Jim Quick, we often have this conversation about speaking on stage. Jim Quick, on the introvert scale of 1 to 10, is probably at about 15. But
I
he
could
is,
give him a run for his money.
yeah, he is so spectacular. I don't think I'm as introverted as Jim, but I also get worn out being on stage. I feel comfortable up there. I'm up there for a reason. I do what I do, but I'm not the extrovert that wants to be up there getting the clap. And in fact, if anything, getting the clap makes me feel very nervous and very uncomfortable. But I have noticed how some of the greatest speakers in the planet out there are introverts. Not putting myself in that. I'm just saying some of the greatest speakers out there are not natural crowd pleasers. And you're out there to deliver a message. You're out there to get their people to strive to their superhuman potential. And in all of that, you wrote the first book, The Upper Hand. You've written another book, and I've got it here. And for any of you that are listening to this, you can't see it, so I'll read it first. The Art of Changing Course, a 3-step strategy to get unstuck and solve your real problems. Now, you keep using that word unstuck. How are we getting stuck? What's creating that stuck to start with?
Man, I think most of us, you're probably in there too with me, everyone listening, we find at times we're in this purgatory of life is not as good as we want it to be, but it's not bad enough to change. So we coast. And the stuckness could be replaced with familiarity or comfort. We get comfortable being uncomfortable because it's not enough to change, but it's still bad. And that's the problem. When you break your arm, you have to stop. But when you hurt your elbow, you can keep going a little bit. You can keep going a little bit, and you can wear it away to the point where you need a replacement or some sort of massive, intervention. That's what we do with our life. And stuckness is like that process. If you leave it be, unfortunately, there won't be this big blow up. The big blow up will be 20, 30 years down the road. You wish you would have done something different. So I vow to be the person I never had growing up. I never had someone pushing me. I never had someone showing me that disability was cool. I never had that. So I had to be that. And I choose to be that every single day. So to help people get unstuck, it's helping them change their language so that they can change their life. It's rewiring the narratives that we have internally on a daily basis so that you can be a little bit more curious and push the envelope. I'm not going to tell you grind, hustle, kill, motivate, buzzword. No, I'm not going to say all that shit. What I'm going to say is, listen, you deserve more than you've been doing for yourself. So why don't we get a little bit more? Why don't we do a little bit more? You could be in a different position. You don't need to be a billionaire. Maybe you don't even need to be a millionaire or 100,000aire. Maybe you just need to be a little bit more content. Why don't we do it? And there's a process for that.
I vow to be the person I never had growing up. That's a mouse pad. That's a t-shirt. That should be a sign on a mug there.
Dude, I truly believe it though. That's why I'm so passionate. That's why even when my social battery burns out, I never had it. And whether I started coaching speakers to help with the business side for some people, I started doing things to give back because I was like, who did I want in my life 5 years ago and 10 years ago that I can be for them? I started that's how you find your expertise or your genius. Give other people what you needed yourself 5 years ago. You have the experience to do what you did 5 years ago to where you are now. You can teach that. So I started being like, okay, I know what I can teach now. And I never had that growing up. So I'm like, man, what can I give back to the world? There's a great sense of satisfaction when you do that.
Now, you mentioned about the pain and about being stuck and being, comfortable with being uncomfortable. No one wants to get a punch in the jaw. No one. I don't care who you are. No one wants that. It's not fun. But that little niggling ache, that little prick, that little poke in the eye, those kind of things we sustain, those kind of things we go, it's not bad enough to change, but we actually start getting climatized by the increase of that pain. Quite often, the problem with being stuck is we don't realize the quagmire that we're actually in or the point of drowning we're in. So how do you realize that, hang on, what you're suffering now, you may think is tolerable, you may think is acceptable, but is actually what's just about to kill you? How do you recognize the gravity of the situation you are in, and therefore cause yourself that change that needs to happen?
Man, that is such a good question. I feel like most people skip this part. Everyone wants to hang out at the finish line without running the race. You know, they want to go immediately to the sexy, pretty stuff. Like, how can I get the followers? How can I get the money? How can I do this stuff? You got to fix the shit before you get the shit, you know, like that's just the reality. The first process, step 3, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3, the first step is going from subconscious to conscious. You have to be honest with yourself. And until you are fully honest with yourself on where you are, where you want to be, the language you use when you speak about yourself, about your situation, until you have radical honesty with yourself, there is no change that's possible. I would say change happens 2 different ways. It kind of happens to you. Someone breaks up with you, you lose your job. You didn't really cause it. You know, it just happens. COVID. And then there's the internal or intrinsic change that you have to make. You realize you're stuck and you need something different. So you have to be the catalyst for your change. Both internal and external change require honesty in where you are, in the language you use, and what you need to do moving forward to take a step in a better direction.
So we've got those. I love the things about being unconscious to conscious, actually starting to kind of like pay attention and start to be accepting responsibility for where you are. So you got the 3 steps, you got the strategy. Then there's also going to be a whole host of how to get out of your own way.
Yes, tough.
Was that the catalyst for actually writing this book?
I lived this book my entire life, and looking back, I was able to write it in reverse. So I started asking, what did I do and what did I help other people and organizations do to change or to manage change? And past managing change, how many people start going to the gym or start a business or but they don't sustain? Starting without sustaining is almost pointless unless you're learning something that can facilitate growth in the future. How do you not only start change, but sustain it? And that's why I was like, okay, how was I able to sustain this? Because people used to ask me, I'd always make a joke. They'd be like, oh, how did you get to the level, you know, with the TV show, the magazines, the followers, the speaking? And they're like, you must have been the best. And I was like, no, it's probably the worst, to be honest. I was in last place the majority of my life. The problem is everyone else quit, so I won by default. I stayed in the race and you didn't. So when you ask, like, how did you get there? I didn't quit. I kept going. I was stubborn enough to say, I believe in this so much that if 1 million people lined up and said, you're stupid, this isn't going to work, it's broken, it's dumb, I didn't care. And I committed to that true belief I had. Now, I also recognize I started 7+ businesses that failed. I didn't commit to those because I didn't have the same passion or fulfillment. Problems happened, I learned, moved on to the next thing. So the art of changing course, the whole process is learning when to stay the course and when to change course. Both of those are skills. You know, people say winners quit last. I'd argue winners quit first when they need to. They get out of their own way when they need to.
I remember having a conversation with Richard Branson many years ago, and he said his biggest skill was to understand when to walk away from something.
Love it.
And he was always saying that people would try blowing air into a dead duck. Just when it's dead, it's gone. Move on. So his biggest skill set was knowing when to kind of like just throw the towel in and move on to the next thing.
See, a lot of people don't. That's vital. But what distinguishes knowing it's a dead duck or not is the honesty with yourself. And that's why that subconscious to conscious is so important. People will say, like, I'm not good enough to do this, or I'm lazy, or they say all of these things. You might feel that way, but feelings are not facts. Just because you feel like you're not good enough doesn't mean you're factually not good enough. Just because you feel like you don't want to do it doesn't mean you can't actually do it. We confuse the thoughts and feelings with actual facts. And if we're able to separate those and treat things with, literally start with honesty. Start with just honesty. Say the situation and no more. Don't sprinkle extra seasoning on the event. If you get a flat tire, you get a flat tire. You didn't get a flat tire, now your life's going to suck and now everything's going to go to shit and everything is just all that. None of that happened. You got a flat tire. Let's just keep it honest. And from honesty, we can build.
We don't want to attach ourselves too tightly to the result. We want to attach ourselves to the education.
Absolutely.
A lot of people take it way too personally when something goes wrong, without realizing the whole host of education we got from that work in progress. And you can take that education, you can use it again, you can use it again. The results come, the results are usually the last thing. And they're definite, they're there, as you say, it's the fact. This worked, this didn't work, but why didn't it work? And let's look into that. A lot of people go, well, if it wasn't successful, it didn't work. There's so much education you can get from that you can actually translate into other parts of your life. I don't want to wait until the end of the podcast to tell people where they can find out about you in the book. So first things first, where can they find The Art of Changing Course? Where can they find the book?
It's all over. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Indiegogo Books, pretty much anywhere online that sells major distribution of books, you can grab your copy. And if you have any ideas on it, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm always down for a conversation.
And where can they find you? Website, social, where's the best place for people to reach out?
Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of them, just at Chris Ruden, or my website, chrisruden.com.
All right, so they can ask the questions there. So it wasn't that long ago that you had the Upper Hand book actually came out. Okay. What was the response from that back book? Because what's it been, like 4 or 5 years now?
About 4 years, yeah.
About 4 years. So you wrote the first book. It's always interesting for me to ask a first-time author, what happened to you when that book came out? So you put a lot of energy in the book. You put your story on the line. You released it, and all of a sudden you're getting speaking, coaching, consulting for major companies. What happened to you internally when that book was released?
I think internally I learned that there are no such things really as grand slams. It's micro hits that you have to do over and over and over. And there will be bigger waves of momentum and smaller waves of momentum, but there is no end all be all one event that's going to save you from your own way. The book was great, but I still had to grind. I still had to work. I had to use the book to my advantage. It's nothing that really happened to me, but because of my choices using the tools that I developed, I was able to leverage more business and leverage more free time. The biggest shift I did was in doing the book, I realized that I could go to higher levels. So I started asking better questions. How could I optimize even more with a book? Maybe I can use that to help with consulting or bigger speaking deals. And my challenge for the last 2 years was, how can I make the same amount of money or more working much less? And instead of saying it's not possible, I found a way it's possible. So the last 2 years have been more money than I've ever made, but less work, which more free time to find out what I truly feel fulfillment in. So I've really started asking better questions, man. And the author thing is great fulfillment. Don't get me wrong. The ego is amazing. It's great to have the book. But I realized what I did wrong. So I wanted to do another shot at it with the message that's even deeper than self-communication from the first book. It's getting out of your own way and getting unstuck and getting to the root cause analysis of why people's lives aren't what they want it to be.
So where do you want to be? You know, you've decided that as we already stated, normal is nowhere you want to ticket to. And you want to stand out by standing up, and you want to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and strive and thrive from those areas. So what's going to happen to Chris over the next 5 years?
Man, I have so much in the works, but you said something that really stood out to me, and I think this is going to align. Not being as obsessed with the outcome, and more so just like digging into the process. My whole philosophy is plant 1 million seeds, and if none of them grow, plant 1 million more. Just keep going, keep planting. So when people are like, oh, well, if it didn't work, if it's not successful, if you zoom in close enough, everything looks bad. And if you zoom out far enough, there's progress everywhere. Look at the stock market. You zoom in far enough, the stock market is terrible. Zoom out far enough, we've been doing nothing but growing technically. So it's how you use that zoom feature, almost like on navigation, the plus minus, you know. I'm putting in the work. I'm putting in the reps, and things are coming through that are incredible, huge, with magazines and like potential TV shows and all of this stuff. But even if all of it falls through, I love speaking. I'm going to continue to speak. My goal is to become a $50,000 to $80,000 speaker and have those kind of stages and deals. Right now I'm at the 10 to 20 mark, and I'm proud of that, in the process of growing. And I'm super happy with that, but I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, and I just want to keep it going.
Beautiful. Well, I kind of got an idea that you will. Knowing you
Without a
for
doubt. Without
yeah,
a doubt.
knowing you for, and I like the fact that you're just going to keep going. I used to race motocross before my body decided no, that's not happening anymore. And I would race new motocross bikes, and I would also race vintage motorcycles. Now, the beautiful thing about racing vintage motocross bikes is that as long as the engine kept going, I was always in the top 10 because most vintage bikes break down. So just out of just attrition, I would always end up. I remember doing a race once and becoming second, and my ego was excellent, and I've got a plaque and I've got all of that. But I got there basically because a good 40% of the starting grid broke down. And I was chatting with Jesse Itzler, and Jesse actually spoke about this once, that if you studied guitar just for basically 10 minutes each week and just didn't stop for a year, you'd be better than 95% of the planet.
That's incredible.
Just because you were just that 10-minute. And we just give up too soon. If someone is out there, they haven't grabbed the book yet, they're not putting the 10 minutes in, but they're starting to get conscious enough to know that their surroundings is not where they want to be, what is the first line that you would like to give them that we could end this show with?
I would say when you change your language, you change your life. I like leading with that because when you open up your language for more possibilities, for truth, for honesty, and for next steps, you start making those. Language contributes to behavior, which contributes to action. So by changing the internal dialogue, you change the belief system. And by changing the belief system, you change the action. Most people are stuck because they're so busy ruminating, what if, or this is terrible, but I don't know what to do. And instead of saying things like, I just don't know what to do, you don't have to do everything. What's one step? Literally one step that you can do. Don't lie to yourself and say, I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. If I wanted to learn about marketing and I had no idea about marketing, I could say, marketing is so crazy. I don't know. I'd Google marketing and learn one thing about it. And then I do the same thing over and over, because whether you're going to your refrigerator or you're doing the Boston Marathon, both require a single step repeated over time. Be honest with yourself, change your language, and change your life.
Best way to end the show. Chris, thank you very much for coming on the show. Again, anyone out there that needs to get this book, and of course you do because you're getting conscious with where you are, look up The Art of Changing Course, look up Chris Ruden wherever Chris Ruden exists. And Chris, thank you very much for coming on the show and being you.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. You know what to do. If you love it, share, subscribe, but more than anything, do something with it. And remember, life's too short to play it safe, so disrupt, connect, and grow. See you next time.